Hi everyone, Dr. Kareem Awami here, naturopathic doctor. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about the difference between a food intolerance, a food sensitivity, and allergies. So completely different things, and I find that a lot of patients often mix them up. And hopefully, if I have some time, I can also talk to you guys about the pros and cons of the different ways of figuring out what your food sensitivities might be. So let's start with a food sensitivity. No, actually, let's start with intolerance. So you don't usually hear people saying, I have banana intolerance, or I have gluten intolerance. You would usually hear people saying, I have a lactose intolerance, or I am lactose intolerant. This is because intolerance has to do with sugar, not the immune system. And I'll explain a bit more about the immune system later when we get into the sensitivities and the allergies. So when you say I have a lactose intolerance, it means that you don't have the enzyme, that's a lactase, that breaks down the sugar lactose. And lactose, you can find a lot of it in milk. So typically people will drink milk, they don't break this sugar down, and then this sugar doesn't get absorbed. If it doesn't get absorbed, it then feeds the gut bacteria. Then you have the gut bacteria eating all this sugar, and then they produce a byproduct. They basically poop in their gut. And the byproduct they produce is typically gas. So various forms of gases. And this gas can accumulate in your gut and swell up, and you get bloating, you get constipation, you get diarrhea, typically bloating, gas, diarrhea, but you can also have some other signs or symptoms depending on the severity of the sensitivity, maybe some abdominal pain, etc., etc. So typically you'll find that this happens with milk. Now that's a food intolerance that has nothing to do with the immune system. It has nothing to do with the gut permeability or leaky gut or systemic signs and symptoms. It's typically signs and symptoms more local to the gut. Now, an allergy and a sensitivity, those are two different things because they stimulate different parts of the immune system. So an allergy causes an IgE immune response, which is immunoglobulin E. It's just a specific part of the immune system. And this immune response typically shows up or manifests physically as your throat swelling up and blocking, your lips swelling up, itchiness in the back of your throat, or your tongue swelling up. This is typically a life-threatening reaction. This is the one where you have to, use an EpiPen and stab yourself with it on your thigh. So this is a food allergy. A food sensitivity, however, stimulates a specific part of the immune system called an IgG immune response. An IgG immune response doesn't show up as that histamine response, or that swelling up in the throat where you can't breathe anymore. It will show up in various other ways. Typically it's an inflammation in the gut that usually will eventually lead to leaky gut, and we can talk about leaky gut in another video. It's a whole other topic. But most of the time what happens when you get leaky gut is you get things that aren't supposed to get through the gut lining and into the blood. They start getting into the blood. And I'm not talking about like, a piece of donut or like a large food particle. It's microscopic particles, but they're not completely digested, and they're not supposed to get into the blood. So when this stuff starts getting into the blood, the immune system kind of freaks out and starts attacking and starts activating, right? So this activation of the immune system can then be seen in various parts of the body. It's just inflammation. So you can start seeing inflammation in the joints, which could be seen as rheumatoid arthritis. cross-reactivity with the food particles that are getting into the blood. Now your immune system confuses your thyroid for these food particles, and it starts attacking your thyroid. Now you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, for example. So autoimmunity, joint pains, foggy brain, fatigue, skin issues like eczema or any sort of dermatitis, or even autoimmune conditions like psoriasis. So many different conditions can manifest as a result of the immune system just overly active because you have inflammation in the gut. So that is typically what comes from a food sensitivity. Now, there are various ways to test. So again, just to recap, a food sensitivity and an allergy are both immune reactions, and typically they are to the proteins in the food, not the sugars. A food intolerance is typically a reaction to the sugars, so lactose or whatever other sugar you might react to, or you might not have the enzyme to break down. There's no leaky gut in a food intolerance. Usually it's a food sensitivity that will lead to a leaky gut. I mean, if you cause a dysbiosis eventually because of your food intolerances, then that's a whole other story. But food sensitivity and an allergy, immune reactions, food intolerance, no immune reaction, has to do more with the bacteria in the gut. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about food sensitivities. Food sensitivities, there are two major ways of figuring out what you might be sensitive to. And remember, food sensitivities can manifest in the body as many different signs and symptoms. Some people might just be getting headaches whenever they eat some food, or they might be getting joint pains whenever they eat a specific food. So people are different, and they will manifest these signs and symptoms differently. So they'll react to these foods differently. So again, two major ways of figuring out what you might be sensitive to. The first one is called an elimination diet. Elimination diet is basically we remove specific foods that we know most people are sensitive to. We completely remove them from your diet for 4 weeks, a month. And I mean completely remove. Like if you're going to remove dairy, you're going to have to remove milk, cheese, cream, but anything made with butter even, right? So all the pastries and the other stuff. So you got to make sure that you completely remove all those foods. So, and these are a set of foods. For example, let's say we remove gluten, dairy, and preservatives. Okay? We remove that for 4 weeks, and then given that during those 4 weeks you've seen improvement and your headaches went away or your eczema completely resolved, after the 4 weeks are done, we reintroduce one food by one food. So for example, 4 weeks are done, I will start eating gluten on the first day, and I'll wait and watch for the next 3 days. I'll see if my eczema comes back. If it comes back, I'm going to stop eating gluten again and wait for maybe another week until everything clears up, and then try to reintroduce the next day. If my eczema doesn't come back, then I can keep eating gluten and reintroduce the next thing. So you gotta give it space and time between each food, and you gotta introduce one food by one food. Now, there are pros and cons to this. The pro is that elimination diet doesn't cost anything. It's free to do. And I guess you can also see this as a pro, but it forces you to learn different ways of eating. It teaches you different ways of eating. The con is that it's very difficult to do. It's actually extremely difficult to do, and it takes a long time. Now, a major con is that there is sometimes foods that we don't think of removing, but you are sensitive to. So for example, you're sensitive to papaya as well. If we remove just gluten, dairy, and preservatives, and not papaya, and you keep eating papaya, then you've just gone through 4 weeks of restricting your diet, but you might have seen maybe slight improvement or no improvement at all in your signs and symptoms. So that's where a food sensitivity test comes into play. So that's the other way you can figure out what foods you're sensitive to. So there's the elimination diet, and the other one is a food sensitivity test. A food sensitivity test is a blood test where we basically give the lab a sample of our blood, and they test immunoglobulin G, IgG immune response to various different foods. And if they find that your blood reacts to, or the immune system in the blood sample reacts to a specific food, they'll kind of mark it how reactive it is. So that test can kind of come back with a little chart that says, and numbers and colors that say, this is how much you're sensitive to this food, and this is how much you're sensitive to this food. So there are pros and cons to this as well. Some cons: it's expensive. Another con is that it's not 100% specific or sensitive. This means that you might get results saying that you're sensitive to these foods when you're not really, and you might get results saying that you're not sensitive to these foods when you are. Okay? And you might get results saying that you're this sensitive to this food when you're not really that sensitive to that food. So it's not 100%, but no blood work really is 100% specific or sensitive. Anyway, so it's not 100% specific or sensitive. It's costly. Cons, no, pros. So with pros, some people like to see the numbers and the charts, and it helps motivate them. It helps them become more compliant in making the changes they need to make to feel better. So that could be definitely a big pro. And, if you need to see numbers and statistics to make the changes, then so be it. Another pro is that sometimes it will catch things that the elimination diet doesn't catch. For example, if you're sensitive to ground flax seeds and we don't cut off flax seeds, then in the elimination diet, then you will see that as an improvement when it comes back saying you're sensitive to ground flax and you cut off ground flax. And the other pro is that, so we said it's good for people who need to see numbers. It can catch things that elimination diet sometimes misses. And then the other thing is that it can be also used as a guide alongside the elimination diet. So you do the blood work, you get the blood work back. It says you're sensitive to X, Y, and Z. You eliminate them for 4 weeks, plus anything else that you think you might be sensitive to, even if it comes back, okay on the food sensitivity test. And then you kind of figure out in a month, figure things out. You figure out what you're sensitive to. Hopefully your symptoms resolve. So those are the two ways of figuring out your food sensitivity test. Sorry, your food sensitivities. And I hope you enjoyed that little video. If you have any questions, please send me a message or comment in the comment section.